I have a question. We've been to Greece like 7 times and I've never had rabbit stew. Are you sure this is really authentic?
You think I'm making this up? Like, there's people we can call if we want to find out the truth about what's authentic in Greek food.
Oh, that's a really good point. Who should we give a call to? Hey, George.
Hi, George.
Amanda, how are you doing? Jordan, great to see you.
Today we're going Greek. Okay, you ready? We're gonna make a Greek rabbit stew called Stifado, which I think is Greek. I think is Greek for stew.
Puneli is one. That's the rabbit, and lagos is hare.
The first thing we're gonna do, the very first thing we have to do is we have to prepare our pearl onions. So I got about a pound of pearl onions here. I'm just gonna cut the ends off, very little bit of each one. You know, the very tips. And the hairy side on the back. And then you're gonna dump these just straight into boiling water, okay? I have boiling water here. You're just gonna dump them right into this boiling water. About 30 seconds in the boiling water. We're just blanching them to get the skins off. Count to 30, 1, 2.
I mean, generally, rabbit is connected with Stifado. When you eat rabbit, it's basically, most people do Stifado when they do rabbit. You can do it other ways too. You can do it like a bit of a drier one, you know, with a bit of lemon and so on,
15, halfway there, 17.
Some other kind of a sauce, but generally it's with onions.
30 seconds. After 30 seconds, you're just gonna take them right out of this boiling water, drop them into a thing of ice water. What's happening here is you're sort of creating steam between the layers of onion skin by going from boiling hot to ice cold. After you've done that, you just sort of pop them right out with your fingers, okay? Now, there we go. See, pretty simple here.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. We had, I remember when we first came to Greece, we had, we were in sort of in the countryside. It was outside Athens, a suburb of Athens, but there was a big yard and so on. And we had lots of bunnies, lots of rabbits, and the sheep. Yeah. So once in a while, some of the bunnies would go missing, and we'd be eating Stifado. And during Easter, we lost our lamb, and we didn't know where it was, but I guess we just ate it out.
So you got your onions ready. We're gonna cook them in a little bit of olive oil here. Always go with Greek olive oil. You know, once you've spent some time in Greece, tasted the olive oil, you realize how good their olive oil is. So, gonna take these pearl onions, pour them right in there, let them cook up like that.
We do keep our good olives for sure, and, but there are lots of olives to go around. We have very low acidity. Generally, and that's the key to good olive oil.
I'm gonna add 6 garlic cloves. Some people chop them up. I like them whole. I like to get a whole roasted garlic clove. I'm just gonna add that in there too. And I'm gonna add these potatoes, even though we're not gonna cook them whole till later. Got about 10 little baby potatoes in here, only because I like getting the outside sort of olivey. Add salt and pepper. While that's getting a little bit of color, you can take your rabbit legs. I can use 4 to 6. I order them. I'll put a link for where I get them in the recipe. They're pretty easy to get. A little more expensive than they should be. You know, a lot of people are sort of squeamish when it comes to rabbit. They don't like to eat furry, cute things. You know, if you're like that, I guess you shouldn't make this dish. You know, but the truth is, rabbit's actually very healthy. Healthier than chicken, healthier than most meats, really lean. I read somewhere that they have like some kind of thing, element, chemical in their meat that is good for sperm production.
I guess that's where the bunnies, that's where the Playboy came out of. I didn't know.
Take some salt both sides pretty liberally. 2 tablespoons of salt just on these 4 rabbit legs, and then you're going to take some flour. There's just some plain all-purpose flour here. I'm just going to dip each of these, dredge them in flour, technical word, dredge. Just kind of get them coated in flour here. That's really just so we can get a good, nice brown surface. Just going to dredge these up, leave them on the plate. All right, by now we have some good, you know, a little bit of color on our potatoes and garlic and onions, so I'm going to take them out of the oil here. Now I'm going to turn the heat way up. I want this to be pretty hot because I'm trying to brown these rabbits. So all you want to do now is you want to take these rabbit legs, okay, and lay them into this braising pan or your Dutch oven here. Yeah, I would have liked them to simmer a little bit more than that, but that's okay. And you're just gonna let those cook for about 4 minutes on each side.
So Amanda, how do you like Jordan's new look with his beard?
I love it. This is who he was when we connected 10 years ago, and then he cut it all
really?
off. And I felt betrayed. I was like, this is not what I signed up for.
I like the bandana too.
Yeah.
Do you see the ponytail back here?
Oh, that one I did. Wow. I think I'll do that too.
Okay, so, you know, after about 4 minutes, they're going to be getting a nice brown crust. You can see that there. So you're just going to flip them over, give them about 4 minutes on the other side. Get that nice browning on both sides. So after these have cooked for about 4 minutes on the second side, we're just going to take them out. Whoa.
It almost hopped right off the plate.
You don't usually have Stifado in the summertime. I mean, you can, and it can be. It's not a very heavy dish. I mean, rabbit is a light dish generally, but because it's with a lot of onions, you know, and it's sort of cooked this way, it's a bit of a heavier dish than you would normally have in summer.
Okay, so you're gonna take this. You take the pan you cook the rabbit in, and cook the onions and the potatoes in. You're gonna pour in about a cup of red wine, okay? Just pour, it's gonna sizzle really loud, okay? But you're gonna pour in about a cup of red wine. You wanna let that red wine just, you know, this is called deglazing. What we're doing is getting all the like chunks of rabbit and charred bits and flavor off the bottom. Let that wine reduce by about half. Then we're gonna add about half a cup of chicken stock. Gonna add about half a cup of tomato sauce. You can use jarred tomato sauce. I kind of making tomato sauce all the time, so I have it in the refrigerator homemade, but you can use it from a jar or a can. Just like some plain tomato sauce, about half a cup. And then I like to add a pint of cherry or grape tomatoes because I think it gives it a real fresh tomatoey flavor that you don't get otherwise. So I'm gonna add that in there. I like to use fresh bay leaves, not the dry bay leaves. They don't really have any flavor. The dry ones, but people like to use them because it feels right. Gonna add that in. Then we're gonna take cinnamon stick, dump that in there, and I got about 8 allspice berries. Gonna add them in there, okay? This, you know, that's a real flavor. Again, salt and pepper at every step, as you know. Let that come to a nice strong boil. Then you're gonna take your rabbit legs, put them back in. I like to lay them down one side, but then leave the prettier side up just so they get some flavor there. Okay, do the same thing here. Then you got the boiling thing, take it down to a simmer, a low simmer, so still bubbling, but not like crazy bubbling. And then once you have the simmer, you're just gonna put the lid on here, cover it, let it simmer for about 25 minutes.
Yeah, my mother's name is Margarita Papandreou, or in the US they would call her Maggie Papandreou, or Chant was her last name, or maiden name, Maggie or Margaret. So Margarita Papandreou. She grew up in a working class family outside Chicago. She studied in Minnesota. Her first degree was in public health, and then in journalism. And she went around the U.S. I think it must have been, during the war or just after the war, and doing screening people for tuberculosis. I think it was then. So she was working on that. But also as a woman, she was, quite, I guess, sort of ahead of her times to be very involved. And she got a bit involved in politics because she would write articles for her grandfather, who ran as a local, I guess, county member or something, county candidate for somewhere around Chicago. He was then in the Socialist Party. There was a Socialist Party actually in the U.S. there in the 30s. Then she got quite a bit involved with the movement of the women's movement in Greece. She actually created a whole movement called the Union of Greek Women.
Wow.
And it was widespread all over Greece. Very, very strong movement. and very huge participation, and of course reviews. We all worked, we all learned from her on that. She was always standing up, for these issues and talking to my father. And when my father did become prime minister, she lobbied, not only my father, but just generally the women lobbied for big changes in the laws. So they changed the law on dowries because you had to have a dowry to get married. Abortion was legalized. There was only religious marriage that was recognized before that, and so civil marriage was brought to Greece. So you can get married outside the church. Women can maintain their name. They don't have to take or the husband can take the woman's name actually, and the child can take either name or both. For me, it was almost natural that I didn't discriminate. I didn't feel that there was any real discrimination between. I didn't see women as as something inferior or something to. I had a lot of respect for women as women, but as just other fellow human beings. So I didn't really grow up with this sort of macho culture. It was sort of alien to me. I couldn't identify with it. We were in exile during the dictatorship. My father was put in jail. My grandfather was put in jail fighting for democracy. He actually died under house arrest. Then we all left when my father was released from jail after pressure actually from a lot of the economists from the US. Kenneth Galbraith was one of the guys that was really pushing because he had worked with Kenneth Galbraith and with John F. Kennedy as an economist in the Kennedy team. So when we left, we went to Sweden, Canada, and then came back to Greece. And I had worked a lot with civic education and adult education in Sweden and how they organized it. So I organized my little movement in Greece on organizing around the countryside, basically study groups around civil education. Why? Because we were moving out of a dictatorship. So I was saying, okay, we have to build up the democratic culture. It's not just changing, kicking out a dictator and everything's fine, as we've seen around the world, because things can become very authoritarian, or there can be an authoritarian party that takes over, or people don't realize that, there's a different type of leadership. They've seen these leaders that are sort of these so-called powerful, banging their fists on the desks and, and shouting and so on. But that's the way leaders should be. So we really had to change this. I ended up having about 300,000 people taking these study courses in Greece, which were about 10 million. So it was a large number. But the amazing thing was that almost most of them, not all of them, but most of them were women. The funny thing was that, particularly in the countryside, many of the men wouldn't let their wives go to these courses unless they were sewing courses or knitting courses. So what we did is we actually organized sewing and knitting courses for women. And then we would say during the course, would you like to talk about, family programming, family planning? Would you like to talk about, women's rights? And of course they would be very interested. So we would start talking to them about that. So actually we really worked with the women's movement to get people teaching about women's rights, about, family planning and how so to free women from this. We got a lot of bad phone calls from a lot of these husbands, but a lot of people also agreed, accepted this. So this was part. So on the one hand, you have the legal changes, the legislative changes, and on the other hand, we had this sort of educational program, cultural program to spread the essence of what it is to be equal.
So after 25 minutes, you're just going to take this off. You're going to pour in your potatoes and your onions. I like to then take my rabbit legs, just sort of lift them up so that they're on top. Just so that all those potatoes and onions are in the boiling juices, so they'll cook really, really well. And then I'm going to turn it up a little bit, just the heat up a tiny bit, just because we made it a little bit colder by adding those ingredients. And then we're gonna let that simmer for another 15 minutes.
Greece was mentioned in the UN as one of the models when we did this, when this legislation, this was 1985 we're talking about, right? This is like many years ago. So when we passed all these laws, Greece became a model in the UN.
After 15 minutes, you're gonna take the lid off, take a look in there, grab a fork, stab one of the potatoes just to make sure they're cooked through, okay? Yep, nice and tender. It means it's okay. I'm just gonna do a quick stir here. Make sure there's nothing stuck on the bottom, any goodness. Turn the heat up just a tiny bit because I want to reduce that sauce just a little bit to thicken. So I think I'll let it cook 5 more minutes and then it'll be ready to serve. That'll be our final step. All right, really looks good. But it's gonna look even better on the plate. I'm gonna take 2 rabbit legs, some, hoppity hop legs. All right, we want to make sure that you get some good onions on each one here, some potatoes. That's the best part, honestly. It's even better than the hoppity hop rabbit. Gonna just scoop that sauce on there. I like to serve this with a big hunk of bread for sopping up the sauce. Maybe a couple of parsley sprigs just to, add a little color. And there you have it. Rabbit Stifado.
So how is it?
Yum. I think a lot of people don't like rabbit for the same reason they don't like beer. It's a little too hoppy. Thank you so much. Goodbye, George. I hope we see you in Greece soon this summer, I hope. I hope there's travel.
Always welcome to Greece. I miss you too, and let's make sure we get together. Hopefully we can travel by then, and Greece will welcome you, and so will I.